The main reason to be slightly anxious about the market is the price which investors are prepared to pay. So the multiple of those earnings, those profits, which they're prepared to pay for a share of them. So the valuation of the market.
Hello and welcome back to the Personal Investor Podcast. I'm Ed Monk and I'm joined by Tom Stevenson, Investment Director here at Fidelity, to talk about some good news for investors, which is the fact that stock markets in the UK and the US at least are at new all-time highs. But because this is investing and every silver lining needs a cloud, we're going to also be asking whether it means that a reversal in fortunes is now on the way. So, Tom, welcome along. How are you?
Good, thank you, Ed.
So we've spoken quite a bit about the US market being at a high or near its high. So why don't we start with the UK? I've just said there that the shares are at an all-time high. First of all, which bit of the UK market specifically are we talking about when we say that?
So we're talking about the FTSE 100, which is the UK benchmark index, the 100 biggest companies. It went through 9,000 this morning. I'm looking out at a big screen as we speak, and I see it's still just over 9,000.
Yep.
Now, it's been pretty rapid rise, actually, because it was only this time last year that it went through 8,000 for the first time. So,
yeah,
there's been quite a bit of positive momentum behind UK shares recently.
And getting under the bonnet of that a bit, what has been driving this good run for the UK at least? Where has the growth mostly been coming from?
Well, it's not been coming from what you might think of as sort of growth-focused companies, and this is an interesting reflection of the makeup of the FTSE 100. So I actually had a look for a piece that I was writing this morning at the winners and losers in the FTSE 100, and there's a huge dispersion actually between the best performing stocks in the FTSE 100 and the worst performing. There are five companies within the 100 which have more than doubled over the last year, but there were also plenty which have fallen by 25-30% as well. But the winners are broadly split into a number of categories. They're all quite defensive and actually quite literally defensive. Three of the best performing stocks have been Rolls-Royce, BAE, British Aerospace, and Babcock, all defence companies. And that's obviously a reflection of what's going on in the wider world and the money that's being invested.
I always feel like we should make the point about Rolls-Royce. Mostly it makes engines for aircraft, right? That's what it is, no longer making big luxury cars.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an aero engine company, both civil and defence, and it also has some sort of nuclear energy interests as well. But it has been a beneficiary of this interest in the defence sector. There's a gold and silver company, Fresnillo, has done very well. That's also a reflection of what's happened to the gold price. The banks have done quite well. Interest rates have stayed a bit higher for longer than I think people expected, and higher interest rates are good for banks' profit margins. And defensive stocks. I mentioned another one, BAT, cigarette company. One of the more defensive sectors. So, I think what it's not telling us a huge amount about is the health of the UK economy. There are a couple of other companies in there which are among the top performers: Standard Chartered, Airtel Africa. They have nothing to do with the UK economy at all.
Well, we'll come on in a second to whether the stock market performance can map onto economic performance or not. But just overall then, this run that the UK market has been on, something like a 10% capital gain in the past year. Had a quick look. I think that makes it more lucrative for investors in total return terms, which of course means including dividend yield, than the US market, which, as we're about to talk about, has also been at an all-time high. So it's not often we've seen that arrangement in those two major markets.
No, I think you're probably right. I think in capital terms, they've both been similar, and that the US market has had a very strong run very recently. I mean, if you'd asked me a few weeks ago, then the FTSE 100 would definitely have been well ahead of the US market. But in total return terms as well, you're right that the yield, the dividend income from UK shares is higher than it is in the US. So the total return is almost certainly slightly ahead for the UK.
And you said that this is not telling us very much about UK PLC particularly. Is that why this all feels a bit incongruous with the kind of news flow that we see around us? What we're hearing about the economy has been pretty mixed this year. GDP has sort of bumped along, some negative months of growth. It doesn't feel like the stock market should be booming, but as you say, maybe not that connected.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think if you look at, if you compare the FTSE 100, the 100 biggest companies, with the FTSE 250, which is the next 250 after the top 100, though the FTSE 250 tends to be more of a domestically focused stock market index, more of the earnings, it's also quite an international index actually, but more of its earnings are generated within the UK. And if you look at the performance over the last few years, the FTSE 100 has done much better than the FTSE 250. The 250, I think, is a reflection of frankly quite difficult times in the UK economy, and the 250 is also just at a new all-time high, but it's really no higher than it was 4 years ago as we came out of we came out of the pandemic. It's kind of gone sideways and been quite volatile over the last 4 years, whereas the FTSE 250 has been a nice steadily performing index actually.
Okay, well, turning to the US then, all-time highs there as well. A similar story on the economy. I mean, certainly recently, in the last year or so, there's been some question marks about growth in America. So why are American shares at new highs?
Well, American shares are at new highs for a few reasons. I think one of the reasons is that the technology stocks, the likes of Nvidia, which recently became the first company ever to have a $4 trillion dollar market capitalization. Those technology stocks have started performing quite well again. That's dragged the market higher. One of the reasons why the American stock market is doing well is related to this what's being called the One Big Beautiful Bill. It's a slightly ridiculous name for a bit of legislation, but anyway, that legislation, which recently went through Congress, was approved by the Senate and the House of Representatives, sets in motion some quite heavy fiscal government tax spending. It includes some tax cuts, some cuts in spending. It's being seen as a positive for growth in the US economy. Now, you could say that, in the long run, it sets up some problems in terms of inflation and high debts and higher deficits. The stock market is kind of saying, I think that's a problem for tomorrow. In the short term, this is actually good for growth, and so that's been the main driver of the US market, which is also at an all-time high now.
Okay, well, I hinted at the start of all this, Tom, that there's two possible reactions that investors can have to markets hitting new highs. You can sort of rejoice at the money you've just been making, lots of people will, or you can start to fret about how it's all going to go wrong. And obviously, one of the practically the foundation stone of a lot of investing is to buy low, sell high. So do the pessimists have a case this time? What are the signs that the current market level is sustainable or unsustainable from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are pros and cons. There are reasons to be cheerful and reasons to worry about the stock market at the current level. I mean, if you look at the fundamentals, the stock markets are driven by the level of profitability of the companies listed on the stock market and the amount that investors are prepared to pay for a share of that profits growth. The earnings growth at the moment is not bad. It's positive. Earnings continue to grow. We're actually at the beginning of what's called earnings season, which is when the quarterly results all come in a big rush. Over the next 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to see lots of company results. They've started to come through this week, and actually, I think the news is going to be reasonably positive. Maybe 6 or 7% earnings growth. So that's good. The main reason to be slightly anxious about the market is the price which investors are prepared to pay for them. So the multiple of those earnings, those profits, which they're prepared to pay for a share of them. So the valuation of the market, and that in the US anyway is currently pretty high. So investors are paying about 22 or 23 times expected earnings, which is high by historical comparisons. It's certainly high compared to most other markets in the world. I mean, we've been talking about the UK market, much cheaper actually than the US market. And that's one of the reasons why people are getting interested in the UK market.
Something like 13, 14
about 13
times?
or 14 times. So it's maybe 2/3 the valuation of the US market. So, I think, there's growth there, but certainly in the US, markets are a bit expensive. And, history suggests that your returns are inversely related to the price that you pay. If you pay a high price, you're likely to get a less good return than if you pay a low price.
Or are you, Tom? Because I wanted to bring up, well, there's been several bits of work done over the years about what happens to markets once they've hit a new high. We've done a bit of work on this. I was looking at some work on by Schroders, the asset manager, from about a year or so ago, but it was looking at historically at returns, inflation-adjusted returns over 2 and 3 years, and it showed that basically there's no real difference. If you invest at the point of an all-time high, the return you're going to get in 2 or 3 years' time is pretty much the same as at any other time. And I guess the reason for that is that in general, markets rise. That's what they do over long periods of time with volatility along the way, etc. But they basically rise. And so it's the normal state of affairs that you're going to be investing at a point that's higher than it's ever been. And yet you can still expect over long terms for it to go higher.
Absolutely right. And that's why there isn't actually a contradiction between what I just said and what you've just explained, because what I was saying was that the returns that you should expect are inversely related to the valuation of the market.
Valuation, sure.
And that is not the same as saying, well, the market's high. The fact that a market is at a new high, all that means is that it's higher than it has been in the past. And as you say, markets tend to go up. So actually, they spend an awful lot of their time being at an all-time high.
They do.
I don't know what the proportion is, but it might be 2/3 of the time.
Yeah, it's always, most of your time as an investor is spent in the sort of you're at or within 5% of an all-time high. That's the kind of normal run of things. And obviously periods where you lurch way below that, but being used to investing into a market that always looks a bit toppy, a bit kind of, like it's done well. Yeah. That's what investing is.
And that's what one of the challenges it is. You have to be able to look at a market hitting new highs and not be necessarily concerned by that, because a market at a new high may or may not be expensive. And what we've just described, both the US and the UK are currently at new highs. But one is historically quite expensive, the US, and one is historically not expensive, the UK.
Okay. That all said, is there any advice for people when markets are this high in this sort of situation? It sort of feels like it's something you've spoken about, Tom, before in your writing. It feels like investors have been given something of a second chance this year. We had big falls, really significant falls, and we've memory hold them because they kind of sort of we're over that now. But the truth is, they were like big 20% falls, peak to trough, and they bounce back really quickly. It feels like investors have been giving a second chance there. So given that kind of redeemed situation that investors find themselves in, what is there to say about what they should be doing now?
Yeah, it does feel to me a bit like a second bite of the cherry, really, because if you roll back to February, we would have said exactly the same things about the US market. We would have said it's hitting new highs, it's quite expensive, and what we have seen over the last 6 months is something of a rotation out of that very expensive US market and into other markets. That's one of the reasons why the UK actually has pushed on to a new high, because there's quite a lot of money that was invested in the US is now looking for homes elsewhere, and the UK, along with Europe and Japan and other markets, has been a beneficiary of that. So what I would say is that, and I was saying it back in February, but I say it again now, is that actually this is an opportunity to look at your portfolio and to ask yourself whether it is, it's well suited to your aspirations for, your goals, your financial goals. And so is it well balanced? Do you have an overexposure to one market, which many people may still have an overexposure to the US market? With markets at an all-time high, it actually gives you the opportunity to move your investments around when it's not psychologically painful, because you're doing it at a position when you're probably made a profit. And actually, so if you're taking something out of the US and putting it into Europe or the UK, you're probably doing it from a position of strength. It feels good to do it. So I would say to people, now is a really good time to look at your portfolio, decide if it's doing what it should be doing for your financial goals, and act accordingly.
Okay. Well, Tom, that is about as much time as we have for now. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks very much, Ed.